Okay, so I was thinking about making this video, but then I thought, but did I really play that many games this year? At first I was like, no way. I didn't play all that much. But looking at my whole 2022, yeah, I actually played a decent chunk of games this year, even if at the end of the year it was dominated by a few. And most of the games were even good. And then there's the Cycle Frontier, which gets my vote for the most disappointing game I played. I played a decent amount of games this year, like I said, including the first 45 minutes of Morrowind, where I just walked around and found a cave and died before realizing that the game doesn't autosave, and I still had more fun doing that than playing the cycle. It's this PvE Battle Royale hybrid, which sounds pretty cool until you realize that you're not the best at FPS in general, and doing a bunch of work just for some tryhards to come in and steal your rewards just feels not good. Like, I get it, the goal is to be the tryhards that do that and steal all the hard work, but that's just not something that I find super enjoyable. I'm not saying that the game was even bad, I'm just saying that it was the most disappointing game that I played because I don't enjoy Battle Royale all that much, and I was hoping that it would have a bit more of a PvE aspect to it, but it just didn't end up working out that way. I also got to try Exoprimal, and that was a lot of fun. It was a bit simplistic. I hope there's a lot more dino and player variety in the full game, but I'll chalk that up to being a closed network test. I enjoyed the class system and being able to swap on the fly to suit your team's needs. The objective swaps per game, similar to Overwatch Quick Play, and actually with the class system, there really is a lot of Overwatch DNA in this game. I mean, I like Overwatch, so this is a win for me, but also, you can be a dinosaur, and that's pretty rad. More games need to let you do that. The Terra mod for Kingdom Hearts 3 is a fun time. I've been a Kingdom Hearts fan since the beginning, and honestly, launch Kingdom Hearts 3 was pretty disappointing. The Remind DLC vastly improved the game, but it really couldn't do much for the story.
The outside world must seem so big and scary. I know how she feels. Lucky for me, you two came along at just the right time.
So I set it on the back burner until I had the motivation to play through it on PC to actually get to the Remind content. The Terra mode made that possible for me, and honestly made the combat feel better than it did in the base game. Dashing around and using unique keyblades and forms spiced it up just enough for me to get through to the end again, on critical this time. Make sure you turn off attractions though.
Oh.
Turns out Hollow Knight's a fun game. I don't think you really needed me to tell you that, but I got a chance to play it this year and it was pretty good. I didn't get too far in it because Metroidvanias require a lot of focus, and I'm bad at that. But it's probably the prettiest game I played this whole year, and that's really saying something, because I played some really gorgeous games that you'll see. I just need more games to really embrace their 2D aesthetic, please. Like Have a Nice Death. This is a fast-paced roguelike where you play as Death, who's tired of all of his paperwork piling up because his underlings aren't doing their jobs. So logically, you have to put them in their place. This game's tone is silly, and I love it. It has all the things you'd expect from a roguelike, but what I really appreciate is how snappy the controls are. Controlling Death just feels really good and responsive, and all the different weapons and abilities feel good too. And if there's one thing I can say to get you to play this game, there's an intern who is a pumpkin, who is named Pumpquin, and they're adorable. Wait, what are you doing in the boss room? If you're excited for hot takes, then here's one for you. Overwatch 2 is a fun game. Yes, Blizzard as a company is trash and has a lot of trust to earn back. Yes, Overwatch is still in early access technically because we don't have the PvE yet, and really that's the main selling point of the game. But Overwatch has been one of my favorite multiplayer games ever since release. This is just more Overwatch with consistent content, so that makes it good by default. Also, I'm a tank main, so the entire overhaul to the tank role has been a blast for me. Still need to see that story mode sooner rather than later though, and oh my god, those skin prices, dude. Like what? What? Come on. A game that didn't hit quite as hard as I expected was Daemon X Machina. I believe you pronounce it Daemon X Machina. It's not like Daemon Cross Machina or Demon Cross Machina, right? Anyway, this is the first mecha game that I've ever really tried, and it got repetitive pretty quick. I played it for a solid 8+ hours, and all that seemed to change for me was the aesthetics of the levels, but they also were mostly deserts, and how fast my gun shot. The enemies didn't get harder, the challenges didn't increase in depth. I really was just left wanting more after the session, and the game didn't give me any confidence that it was going to meet those expectations.
Yes, I'm here, and yet I'm not all there.
GTFO was another game that didn't really sit well with me. This one's 100% personal preference, and I can tell that it's a well-polished game with a defined goal and presentation, but it's not something I could say I enjoyed. It was too slow paced, and I'm not really into games where the ideal way to play is just to sneak around or you just lose. In a similar vein, I tried my annual bout of Phasmophobia this year, and I still can't get into it. The biggest barrier for me with this one is how it just kind of feels incomplete. Feels like the most early access kind of game. And if you can handle that, and everyone has fun with Phasmophobia, I'm just the weird one out on this one. I just think it's okay. I'm not a huge fan of horror games in general. I like the spooky aesthetic, but I don't necessarily like the spooky games, you know? To finish up the trifecta of multiplayer games that I've wanted to like, but I really didn't, Valheim is just okay. The aesthetic is fine, but for some reason I haven't been able to vibe with these sort of crafting games outside of Terraria. The idea of building structures only for trolls to show up and destroy everything with no real way to defend yourself because the combat is subpar is just poor design to me, so I can't really get super engrossed in anything because I'm just expecting something to go wrong. Poor combat plus unreliable building equals unfun time for Spannon. So let me tell you about V Rising. V Rising, in my opinion, is the game every single one of these survival builder games tries and fails to be. The simple act of making this game about vampires makes the game feel so much more fleshed out than anything else on the market. You have to pay attention to things like time of day, not because enemies will get arbitrarily stronger because it's dark, but because you're a vampire and the sun can kill you. Yeah, in this game, the dark makes you stronger, and trekking out in the daytime is the risk. If you want resources and it's daytime, you have to hide in the shadows like an edgy game of the floor is lava, and this forces you to actually think about the time mechanic without it being, as I said, an arbitrary burden. There are places that you'll need to travel to during the day if you want to start the boss fights at night. Speaking of, the boss fights in this game are all great, and this is mainly because the combat is also pretty great. It's a top-down game, which isn't exactly my favorite, but it makes up for that because the abilities are all snappy and responsive. Tight combat controls means that they can make bosses that do some crazy nonsense, because no matter what they do, you have the tools needed to dodge and counterattack once you learn the patterns. Some of these enemies also wander around the world, which leads to cool moments where you get absolutely destroyed by a boss before you come back and completely destroy them once you have all the better gear and abilities. Speaking of abilities, every boss gives you an ability like some sort of gothic Mega Man. Some are combat abilities and some are transformation abilities, including the best power, the power of Rat. And I haven't even talked about building a base yet. In this game, you don't build a little hut or a house or anything like that. No, in this game, you build a castle, because you're building your big final boss castle asking any adventurer to come challenge you. This is the game where I'd be absolutely okay with mobs coming in and trying to destroy everything. It's fitting, and you're a vampire who can take on anything. You can even make tombstones and summon undead ghouls to guard the door, and you can kidnap villagers to make them your servants. The pieces are there for a really creative take on PvE invasion, and it seems like they're actually looking at how to do that. I guess my only flaw is that it's a pretty complete early access game. I know that sounds weird, but when games are like 90% complete or feel 90% complete, it's very hard to actually like get back into them, you know? Because you've basically done kind of like everything, and then when the game's out, the game's kind of out. This isn't a game where like, I wouldn't say it's the most replayable kind of game. It's not like one where you're gonna be like, I can't wait to play this 30 times in a row. No, it's just a really, really fun game. And it's enjoyable, but you might want to wait till the full release so you're not spoiled like I was. Deep Rock Galactic is a game that I've played before. Multiple times, in fact. But every time I come back to it, I'm like, okay, this game's pretty fun. You play as one of 4 Dr. Eggman, and your goal is to kill bugs, diggy hole, and get loot. You gotta play this one because my own brother is in this game. And also, so is his dog. My Eggman of choice is the engineer, because who really needs to aim when you can just build the stuff that aims for you? All the characters can level up and get expanded equipment and abilities. The game has a battle pass that's 100% free and adds permanent content to the game. Honestly, explaining this game just doesn't do it justice. It has its own fun, silly personality on top of hectic, exciting gameplay, and really, you just can't put a price on a job well done.
You know, you're not being paid by the hour. Get to work.
Okay, before I start talking about this game, go ahead and turn VSync off and turn high contrast on. Thank me later. Sable is a game that I don't hear anyone talking about, and that's a real shame. This is a simple game about exploring the world to find yourself. The shining achievement of this game is the presentation. You could take a screenshot of any moment in this game and it looks beautiful. The gameplay is a very simplistic take on Breath of the Wild when you're on foot. You can climb most surfaces and you can glide, but aside from being an open world game, there's not too much in common with old Breath of the Wild. The game focuses a lot more on following small stories of people you meet on your journey and discovering aspects about the world at large. But the goal is nebulous as finding yourself. There really isn't much direction to the game. You just kind of go wherever you feel like on your hover bike and talk to whoever you want to. The controls are a bit rough around the edges, both on foot and on the bike, but I still think it's a great game and it's worth experiencing. I'll be making a separate Sonic Frontiers video soon, but I gotta say, I was overall impressed. There's some problems with it, mainly in the controls department, but everything else hits home for me. The story wasn't awful, like the last few 3D Sonic games, and the spectacle was top notch. The Titan fights ended up being some of the highlights of the game. Each one of them has as much depth as a usual Super Sonic boss fight, but you get 3 of them, each with its own unique theme. Solar Ash is the best Shadow the Hedgehog game we are ever going to get. The visuals are spectacular, the soundtrack is great, but what really carries this game is the gameplay itself. This isn't a game with a whole lot of momentum exactly. Gaining speed isn't hard, but maintaining speed while slicing enemies, exploring huge open levels with a gravity that changes on the fly, that's where the game really shines. This game is like Shadow the Hedgehog of the Colossus. The boss of each area is this huge beast that you need to climb, and it also acts as its own platforming challenge that gets harder after each hit. It's great. The tone is also great in this one. This is a game that takes itself just the right amount of serious. This is a world that's built on the edge of a black hole, so there's characters and civilizations that are lost to time. There's a lot of heavy moments in this game, but at the same time, there's also a funny crab character, and you get to hear about all the logs and how all the crab people are all apparently really, really dumb.
Linnea Squad Field Report. Our scuttlecraft crash-landed due to unknown signal interference. Luckily, we landed near the healing hot springs of Oblantis. Yeoman Rowe claims their instrumentation has detected a slow and steady increase in the acidity levels. But the crew and I all agree it feels great, and I ordered Rowe to jump in with us.
If you like fast-paced platforming adventures like Sonic, I'd recommend giving this one a shot. It's fun. So we got not one, but 2 new Pokemon games this year. One of them was very well received, the other, not so much. But which one do I prefer though? Well, Legends Arceus did a ton of things amazingly. The threat of Pokemon attacking you, the fun factor of sneaking up on wild Pokemon and chucking a ball at their head, and obviously the presentation is way better than in Scarlet and Violet. But I played Violet a lot more than Legends Arceus. While I think Arceus is absolutely the better game, and I wish the previously mentioned features were included in Scarlet and Violet, there is something about Gen 9 that's hitting me in just the right way. I'm still playing this game trying to get this stupid shiny Tandemaus. Look, I know you can spawn in an outbreak. Where are you? I think the biggest thing holding Arceus back for me is that Hisui is based off of Sinnoh, my least favorite region. This kind of forced the Pokédex to be subpar, where although I like exploring and interacting with the world, actually finding Pokemon isn't super exciting when you only care about a handful of them. And there's only a little more than half as many as in all of Scarlet and Violet total, and Scarlet and Violet only has about 400 out of the over 1,000 Pokemon that are in the game now, so that means that Pokemon Legends Arceus has a tiny Pokédex. On top of that, the combat in Arceus, the actual like Pokemon battles, are not as in-depth as they are in the main Pokemon games. I like a lot of the ideas that they brought to the table, but the sequential battle system is inherently kind of flawed. And really what you're doing is you're catching a bunch of Pokemon and you're going to transfer them to the games where you can actually use them where you want to use them, because there's not really even a lot to do with them in this game besides throw them out of the Pokemon and just kind of look at them. The graphics in Scarlet and Violet aren't great, and parts of the story leave a lot to be desired, but Arven's story in the entire final area were so good and hit highs that were so great that it just barely pushed above Arceus, and the aforementioned replayability aspects of being able to actually do things in the post-game. If these games were given the time that they needed to be polished, there's an argument that either one of these games could be the best Pokemon games, period. And they both came out this year. I can look past a little jank for the raw entertainment that they both provide. So I'm not even gonna make them fight each other. They just share this part. They both get the same grade. They're tied. Risk of Rain 2 is so good, guys. This is one of the most addictive games I've ever played, and not in the gacha way of make sure you log in every day and do your dailies. Also, the new character is out and only available for 1 month from a random pull, so save up. No, this is addictive because it's fun. It's really fun. Risk of Rain 2 is a third-person shooter roguelike with multiple characters to unlock, each with their own skills and abilities. You start off with a commando, aka dude with guns, who doesn't really have much going on, but then you get a few more characters, and now you're punching through enemies and slashing through enemies and becoming a plant or a doggy or Goku or a wizard or Goku or even a bird. And okay, so there's characters that are fun, but what makes this so addicting? Why do I keep coming back and playing this game time and time again? The roguelike element has been polished to perfection in this game. On top of every character already controlling amazingly, every time you start, the items are completely randomized. Faster attack speed, faster movement, crit rate, teddy bear, a ukulele that shoots lightning, rockets, grenades, wisps, drones. You can summon a big gold man to fight for you, and that's only a small percentage of the things you can unlock. I didn't even mention the challenge variant. Basically, no two runs are ever going to be the same, and spoiling everything would be a disservice to the game. And the icing on the cake? Multiplayer. Playing this game with your friends only makes it more fun and chaotic. It's been my go-to game to play with anyone and everyone who will give me the time of day. And don't even get me started on the presentation. Somehow this game can be the craziest, most hectic game ever, but still be understandable to look at. Everything is simple, sure, but the perfect art style for this type of game. And the music? Buy the game already. Also, the DLC is really good.